This is Chapter 5 in the section of Building a Strong Foundation. Ignorance. Ignorance doesn't mean that we don't know our ABCs. Ignorance in Buddhist terminology means one thing only, that we're ignoring the Four Noble Truths. Ignorance is the beginning of the wheel of birth and death, samsara, which turns again and again. The Four Noble Truths are the core or kernel of the Buddha's teaching. If we ignore them, we ignore the essence. We may have picked out a few bits and pieces of the teaching that we find palatable and not too terribly difficult. Maybe we enjoy hearing about becoming enlightened. Or we like the fact that it isn't necessary to react when someone speaks to us nastily. Or maybe we're hoping to experience bliss if we meditate long enough, or we appreciate loving kindness, helpfulness, and generosity. Certainly, these are all things the Buddha has taught. But when we ignore the core teachings, it is as if we are circumambulating the outer edges of the Buddha's edifice. This widely shared habit dilutes the potency of the teaching. Nibbling at the outer edges of the teaching leaves us with a feeling of uncertainty. We begin to doubt whether we should continue to meditate and practice or instead find more pleasant and comfortable lifestyle. The kernel and substance of life, such as we know it in the human realm, is unsatisfactoriness, dukkha. There is no fulfillment in life. On the contrary, life is constantly beset with difficulties of body and mind. Being born is dukkha. Actually, a new beginning of all dukkha. If our personal experiences have not yet brought us peace and fulfillment within, then what is our alternative? What pathway is open to us? The Buddha's answer is the deathless, or nibbana, which includes no more rebirth. Should we aim to be born in a better state next time with more money, more friends, better health, more wisdom? Is that the answer? Or are we hoping to be born in the Deva realms? Some people think that that must be the answer. They believe that the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. And maybe it is. Certain features of those realms are appealing. But if we know for a fact that birth is dukkha, then we also know that birth in any realm is dukkha. How can something be deathless? Nibbana can be because there is no further birth in it. And where there is no birth, there can be no death, if there is such a thing as the deathless. And if we recognize that birth is dukkha, then what is left to us other than the path toward the deathless? It is not enough to try meditation tentatively, hoping for some bliss and to learn some of the Buddha's teaching to improve our interaction with others. It is enough only when the heart says, there are no other choices but to attain the deathless. One certain way of reaching that conviction is having sufficient dukkha. Of course, nobody would wish for that for anyone else, but the experience of much suffering is often enough to turn the tide. There are many stories from the Buddha's lifetime when women in particular were experiencing so much dukkha, losing their families and loved ones, that they had no choices left. In our society, there may be too many alternatives left. We could conceivably go to the beach and enjoy the ocean, or we could take a trip to India, or the Riviera, or start a new friendship, or go out and eat Chinese food. If we look at any of the alternatives we can conjure up, we recognize each one of them as a sense contact, which is always short-lived. Unless that becomes entirely clear, our spiritual growth will always be shaky. There's a Zen saying, when you walk, walk. When you run, run. But for heaven's sake, don't wobble. Whatever we do on this path, let's really walk, steadily and resolutely. The only alternatives to enlightenment are sense contacts. Many of the Buddha's exhortations are about the dangers of sensual desires. We should check to see whether that's true, and whether the Buddha is just telling us interesting stories that we haven't read anywhere else. The path exists only inside of ourselves. The Dhamma can never be alive in a book or in somebody's words. It has to come alive in ourselves. We must investigate whether it's true that all pleasures come from sense contacts, and all our displeasures from either lacking them or from contacting something we don't like. We have two choices. We can have pleasurable sense contacts, or we can have the solidity of the path that leads out of birth, decay, aging, and death, out of all dukkha. Interestingly, only very few people choose the later. Dukkha is one way of preparing oneself to choose the solidity of the path and commit to practice. We need courage to choose the way of the Dhamma. If we take the path leading out of dukkha, we have to leave a lot of attachments and support systems behind. That takes courage. We discard much of that which we once believed to bring fulfillment and happiness. We need courage to break with that and begin to stand alone. That doesn't mean that we become unpleasant to our former friends, or tell our families we never want to see them again. We begin to loosen our attachments, our clinging and belonging. We recognize beyond any doubt that there is nothing more important to be done than treading the path to enlightenment. Then all of our energies and priorities are geared to this objective. Success can come only if we are one-pointed in our efforts. Then all of our experiences, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, are part of the Dhamma and considered a training. If an unpleasant feeling arises, we know immediately, this is an unpleasant feeling and I'm reacting to it. But I don't have to do that. I can also drop the reaction. If our priorities are still with sense contacts, this won't work. We can't have the Noble Eightfold Path plus sense desires, all in one nice package deal. On the contrary, the Noble Eightfold Path probably provides quite a few unpleasant sense contacts because it requires self-discipline and self-control, which often results in physical discomfort. We also cannot expect success immediately, but we know where we are going. Once we know our direction and no longer need to make choices or worry about guidance, a feeling of security arises. We can lean on the excellent authority of the Buddha, and we don't need to determine our way to spiritual awakening. We have a sure guideline upon which to base our lives. One of our great difficulties can be to find out what is right for this person called me. Where does our specialness lie? There are 5 khathas, the body and the 4 parts of the mind. There are 4 elements and 32 parts of the body. There is nothing and nobody special. Everybody's the same. We don't have to find out what's right for each of us. All we have to do is make a choice between pleasant sense contacts and the end of dukkha. That one choice determines our lives. If we no longer ignore the 4 Noble Truths, but take them as the core of our life, then our ignorance abates somewhat. It vanishes completely only when the 3rd Noble Truth has been manifested. That is, when we attain liberation, nibbana, the cessation of all dukkha. Until then, we can at least diminish ignorance by no longer ignoring its root cause, our identification with the I. All the different teachings of the Buddha assist us in staying on the path. In one of his discourses, Venerable Sariputta enumerates a number of ways of cultivating right view that help us to increase our own understanding. Most important of all, we need to investigate our motives for speaking, thinking, and acting the way we do. When our relationships don't flow smoothly, when they don't mix effortlessly like milk with water, we need to look at our motivations. When our relationships don't flow smoothly, when they don't mix effortlessly like milk with water, we need to look at our motivations. It's not the other person's problems that we need to find, but our own. Motives are like icebergs, 1/3 visible and 2/3 hidden. Unless we can learn to see ourselves more deeply, we cannot recognize our ego-dominated activities. We need to examine our motives for purity. Are they for the benefit of others or for ourselves? Are they rooted in self-affirmation or fear? We have to check our intentions because we all make our own karma. As one of the 5 daily recollections states, I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma. The foundation of our moral conduct rests on right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Without these as an unwavering guide, all personal power dissipates. Our strength does not lie in the body, but in inner security, which arises only if we know ourselves to be blameless. Trying to lean on others brings weakness, which is dangerous. Others are just as impermanent as we are. Mothers, fathers, husbands, wives, teachers, all depart, die, change their minds, or are not around when we need them. We need to be a good guardian of ourselves, watching our steps carefully. Right effort, right concentration, and right mindfulness need to be firmly anchored within. Right effort means applying ourselves steadily, over and over again, not only in meditation but during all our waking moments. If we haven't learned or understood something new, or haven't extended some help or love, our day is wasted. Days are precious, and each one is the only one we have. The past is gone, and the future is conjecture. The next airplane may crash, the next bus might topple over. This is the hour for practice. Just because we have survived in the past is no guarantee we will continue to do so. Unless we use each day to the full, gaining greater insight into ourselves and the teaching, our effort is not right. Right effort becomes a habit that all of us can develop to good advantage. Having right mindfulness every single moment is an ideal that we may not be able to actualize just yet. But unless we have the determination to increase our mindfulness from moment to moment, we will easily forget to practice it. Mindfulness is not just a word or a discourse by the Buddha, but a meaningful state of mind. It means we have to be here now, in this very moment, and we have to know what is happening internally and externally. It means being alert to our motives and learning to change unwholesome thoughts and emotions into wholesome ones. Mindfulness is a mental activity that in due course eliminates all suffering. It shows us clearly that there is nothing else happening except the movement of the 5 khatas: body, sense consciousness, feelings, perceptions, and mental formations. Nothing else is happening except the movement of the 5 khatas: body, sense consciousness, feelings, perceptions, and mental formations. In the beginning, mindfulness takes away worries and fears about past and future and keeps us anchored in the present. In the end, it points to right view of the self. As far as right concentration goes, all we can do is try our best. One part of concentration is renunciation, letting go of pleasant sights and sounds, nice odors, tastes, sensations, and thoughts. We're usually very fond of these sense contacts and cling to them fiercely. We also need to have sufficient self-confidence in our ability to meditate. We need to reach for that which we consider difficult and make it possible. Inner readiness is needed to regard the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path as the main focus of our lives, and everything else is circumstantial. If we have more than an academic interest in the Buddha's teaching, we will want to live by these truths, which are a one-way street to nirvana.